Hey everyone, and welcome back to the 7 Sage Law School Admissions Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Baska, 7 Sage Admissions Consultant and Podcaster, and we're recording this right at the end of February, beginning of March. You know, we're starting to see snow melt, at least in some places. We're getting towards the end of file reading season, and fingers crossed, we hope that you all have been getting some news, at least some news. Good, bad, that what's a waitlist type stuff. And, you know, we also acknowledge there's going to be a lot of news coming back over the next couple of weeks. But also, we're in this kind of weird flex period because of that. You've gotten some decisions. You're still waiting on decisions. You need to be able to be ready to move quickly if you get in a mid-offer at the last second. And give us a little extra twist here. We also know that some of you just got the February LSAT back, and now you're already looking ahead to next year, into the next admission cycle. So today, we're diving into our mailbag to handle a lot of these questions. And by mailbag, we mean our 7 Sage discussion forums. And so 7 Sage HQ has pulled a few of those that they are tossing my way, sight unseen. So we are going to experiment with this. We're going to hope it goes well. So, okay, so question the first. Hi, everyone. I have a high LSAT and a low undergrad GPA, and I'm wondering if taking the GRE would help alleviate the focus on my low GPA. Curious to hear other people's thoughts, comments, concerns, etc. on this. Thanks. Okay, good stuff. So you're an LSAT splitter is what we would say. And by LSAT splitter, we mean high LSAT, low GPA. And other people are going to be GPA splitters, high GPA, low LSAT. Okay. If you already are an LSAT splitter, you already have a high LSAT, taking the GRE isn't going to add anything further to your application because effectively you've already checked off the statistical box that helps balance out your low GPA, the LSAT. Also, and we aren't going to go into this here, but it is statistically unlikely that you could score high enough on the GRE to do better than your LSAT. It's because of the ways in which U.S. News considers or converts GRE scores into the LSAT for the purposes of rankings. So yeah, you know, on the surface, I don't think I've ever seen anyone, whether that be someone I've worked in a consulting capacity or when I was a director of admissions, for whom, if they already had a high LSAT, that adding in a GRE on top of that assisted them for matters. Also for scholarship purposes, typically schools give more oomph to the LSAT than the GRE for scholarship purposes. So I hope that helps. Next question. Okay. I was browsing through the core curriculum and read through some of the letter of recommendation modules, and one of them said that if you don't have at least one academic letter of rec, LOR, most admissions committees will pass on you. This worries me for a couple of reasons. The first being, yes, I'm loving this question already. I've been out of college for almost 7 years now. And 2, when I was in school, I was the student who didn't really participate in class. I just listened, took notes, and aimed to do well. I didn't go to office hours, et cetera, et cetera. I'm worried none of my old college professors would even remember me, even with a refresher. The one professor I would maybe consider wrote a letter of rec for me when I applied in 2020, so I don't know if it's even wise to ask her for another letter of rec now. This would be 6 years later. Currently work at a large law office where the learning curve has been pretty steep. Lots of attorneys, supervisors, mentors who can speak to my learning ability, all that jazz. And so there's actually, we'll go back to the question, which is, actually, there is no question here. Man, always ask a question. But the question is effectively, do I have to have an academic letter of rec if I have been out of school? Well, we'll create the question. If I've been out of school for some time, no. From an admissions officer's perspective, once we see an applicant who's been like 2-3+ years out of their most recent academic experience, whether that be undergrad or grad, we're really not expecting to see academic letters of rec anymore for the reasons that this person mentioned. If it's been 7 years since you were in college and you're in grad school, etc., it's highly unlikely that your faculty would remember you, would remember you enough to be able to write a solid letter of recommendation for you. It would defeat the purpose of a letter of rec, which is we want to learn about what you either bring to the academic environment or the professional environment. It's that second point, though, where if you've been working for 2 or 3 years and ideally working in the same job, or you've been at a job for a year plus, I'd rather hear from the people who've been supervising you, managing you in those capacities, and learning about what you bring to the work environment. That's going to be more substantive to me, and more so. Man, I think the only school who makes a big stink about having at least one academic letter of rec is Duke, that they put that in their application instructions. However, I mean, guys, like people who are 30 years old or older enroll at Duke every year. So trust me, it's okay to be an older candidate. It's okay to be a candidate with a lot of work experience who doesn't have that academic letter. But now I'm also going to give a shout out. So for those of you who are listening to this podcast who are currently in school, and maybe you are like that person, and this was me, admittedly, when I was in college. Hey, I went to class. I participated a good bit, but I'm taking notes. I'm trying to do my best. I did not go to office hours or TA sessions unless I had to. In fact, one of the scariest buildings on campus for me was the faculty office space. Yeah, for reasons that I'll talk about with my mental health professional. But guys, I get it. I 100% get that. But for those of you who are current students, I'd really encourage you, listen to this and just file this away that, hey, to be first of all, you should go to office hours and take advantage of these opportunities because you're paying so much money in tuition. Like, guys, take advantage of this resource. If I could talk with young Jake, I'd really give him that pep talk of go see a mental health professional now. so you can seek out these resources, but you're paying so much money. Take advantage of these resources. These are brilliant scholars. They're there to teach. Take advantage of it. But then two, to speak in entirely practical terms, hey, people can't write a good letter rec for you if they don't know you. So it pays dividends to go to office hours. You're going to learn more, and you'll have this aspect of things down the road. And also, honestly, professors and TAs want you to go to office hours. It helps break up the monotony of their day. So go do that. Hey, for those professionals out there, don't sweat it. If you don't feel like you can find a professor who would write for you, you can just submit 2 professional letters of recommendation. And for you who are currently in school, just take this as inspiration to go out there and get some letters of recommendation from folks. Okay, next question. We begin with a stat, 289 GPA. I have yet to take the LSAT, though they're taking in August and hoping to apply in September. Diagnostic was a 157. I have 3 years of work experience as a teacher. Undergrad grades were rough because I was an NCAA athlete who had to deal with seizures. I'm planning on doing the addenda. Am I SOL? My dream school is McGeorge. I want to work in public policy. Okay, so there's a lot going on here. On a statistical level, and let me look up the medians for Pacific McGeorge from this past year. McGeorge Pacific. Okay, so their medians for this past year were a 156 and a 352 GPA. Got it. Okay. So for folks, another way to phrase this is my undergrad GPA is killing me. It's either below the median or it's way below. What can I do to be in the best position to be competitive for admission? And there are a couple ways to frame this. So let's assume I was having a conversation with this person who asked this question right when she graduated from college. She's about to walk across the stage. She just got that 289 GPA locked in. And I also want to emphasize she has made it. She's had a challenging undergrad, competing as an NCAA athlete, having medical issues. She's made it. She should be incredibly proud of what she's achieved, but also she knows, hey, I want to go to law school down the road and I have a 289 GPA. Yerp. What do I do? What I would tell this person would be, there are now a couple things you can do to make sure that you are in the best position to be the most competitive applicant possible. The first is go kill the LSAT. And by kill the LSAT, I would define that as get a score at or above the medians, the most recently published medians of the schools that you're targeting. So in the case of Pacific McGeorge, if their median this past year was a 156, if you can get to a 157, a 158, that's a good spot to be in for those guys, regardless of your GPA. At this point, you're in, well, again, we refer to as an LSAT splitter. So go kill the LSAT. The second thing is go get some work experience, ideally in the field that's related to what you want to do professionally as a lawyer. So, for example, if you want to go into education law, go teach for a couple years. If you want to do corporate law, go work, either for a corporate law firm, go work in business industry, something like that. You want to work in cultural heritage, go work in a museum for a couple of years, get a graduate degree in museum studies, something of that nature, because that will best point towards your employability down the road. Okay, that's important because your ability to get a job, let me phrase this a different way. Let's say I admit you, and I'm taking a shot on your LSAT being more predictive than your GPA, but let's say I'm wrong. Let's say your GPA is more predictive, and that 289 is more predictive of how you do in law school. Can I still feel confident that you are going to get a job at the end of this day, even if your law school GPA is low? I can have that confidence if I see on your resume that you have already started to establish a professional background and network in the field of law you hope to go into, right? Because effectively, you've got a jump start on this process versus those who are coming to law school cold, so to speak. So, and in this case, this person has been working as a teacher. She wants to go into public policy. There can be a connection there. And also, although the ideal is that you work a little bit of time in a field connected to what you want to do as a lawyer, it's not necessary. So, maybe you had to work a job to pay the bills. Maybe you did service work because that's important to you. Maybe you pursued a religious mission, or you had to do national service, depending on what country you are a citizen of. It's okay if you went into something else, but just even building that professional experience is going to be beneficial. So, is this person SOL? No. Has this person already started doing some of the things that she had to do to put herself in a competitive position? Yes, through her resume, through her work experience. The next step, though, is go do well in the LSAT. By do well, at or above the most recent median for that school, and you'll do okay. Okay, next question. So, do I include the papers I published in undergraduate journals in my resume? They are not real journals, I guess, but is it worth including them for a T14 resume? Okay, so I'm not going to differentiate between a T14 resume and any old resume. Resume is a resume is a resume. Do you need to include those papers? I leave it to you. If it's helpful, I have found in my professional experience that some undergraduate journals are very rigorous publications. I have found others, and I hope no one takes offense because I think some people are like pre-nodding their heads, knowing where I'm going to go with this comment and what I'm about to say. I have found that some undergraduate journals are just a fluffy student activity that one hopes looks really good on their resume, but no one ever actually does anything. And, but we do write stuff. We do publish stuff, but, effectively. So I know as an admissions officer, there's a lot of those, or there are a lot of those that are out there. However, with that said, should you include them? Do you include them? I think that it's okay to include them. The papers that I would absolutely include on your resume would be like a senior thesis, a capstone research project. Absolutely, you should mention those on your resume. Once we move into the field of like undergraduate journals, or you worked in the student newspaper, the student magazine, something of that, where you may have a couple articles to your claim to fame, I wouldn't include all of them. I would just mention that you were part of the undergraduate journal. You published several articles on topics such as XYZ. That it's okay to mention that, and also that is much more succinct than giving me the article titles. Additionally, you can give me a link to maybe your article archive. So if I want to read them, I can do that. But then especially for people who are part of the student newspaper, like you do not need to give me citations to every article you wrote, especially if you were like a weekly contributor and there's a big back catalog there. That would absolutely be one where it's appropriate just to give me the link to your archive, or if I want to look it up, I can just Google your name and the name of your student newspaper, and no doubt I'll find those. So yeah, feel free if you want. You should absolutely include your work in the undergraduate journal on your resume. Whether or not you include the actual papers, you can go either way with that one. I think I'd be more apt to cut out the journal articles themselves from the resume if that's what's getting me down to one page, because you're at least still conveying the basic information I need to know, which is that you're a part of the journal, you wrote some stuff, and if I want to read it, I can look it up. It's all good on that front. I'd be most inclined to leave them in if, on the other hand, you need those extra bullet points to help bulk up your resume a little bit. But yeah, seeing the journal articles themselves, journal papers themselves, are not going to make or break my analysis of your application. So it's not mission critical. Okay. So another question here. I noticed that there's no option to predict admissions for undergrads that don't have a GPA, like international or pass-fail programs. Is there any way to predict admissions outcomes for these degrees, for these folks? Also, how does not having a GPA affect admissions? Okay, got it. So just to take a step back, if you attend an American or Canadian university for your undergraduate, excepting those who operate on a pass-fail system, none come to mind right now, but there are a handful of colleges that operate entirely on pass-fail. Then you will have a GPA that gets factored into the medians for law school admissions purposes. On the other hand, if you attend a college or university outside of the US and Canada for your first undergraduate degree, you will not have a GPA that's factored into the medians. The rationale here is that within the States and Canada, the common grading scale is a 4.0 scale where an A counts for 4 points, a B counts for 3 points, a C for 2 points, and so on. That's the norm. Outside of the States and Canada, just the systems vary so wildly. There are some countries where you see 4.0 scales. There are others where you see 100-point scales. There are some where it's all descriptive. So you don't have a GPA. You graduated with second-class high honors or third-class regular degree. So rather than, from LSAC's perspective, rather than try to convert third-class high honors into a 4.0 scale, they just leave that GPA blank. So how does it affect things? It's like having a tie, basically. So for example, if I'm enrolling a law school class of 200 and 10 of my incoming 1Ls attended a school outside the States or Canada, 10 of them attended Cambridge or Oxford or St. Andrews in the UK, then my median GPA isn't going to be out of 200. It's going to be out of 190. Those 10 students are going to be put off to the side for those purposes. So it makes it slightly easier to obtain a higher median because it's easier to have a high median in a smaller data set than in a bigger data set. For example, when I was the director of admissions at Notre Dame Law School, this was several years ago when, as opposed to now, this year applications are on a big upswing. These were in the days when applications nationally were declining rapidly. And one of our Gallows humorous jokes was like, hey, we could have a 172 median faculty admissions committee as long as you're happy with us only enrolling like 20 students. Because could we get 10 or 11 people enrolled who have a 172 LSAT? Absolutely. Can we get, if we want to enroll a class of about 180 at Notre Dame Law, could we get 90 who have a 172 or higher? Nope, that was not an option. So technically this helps you get obtain higher medians a little bit easier, but usually for the GPA folks, it's not so big of a cohort as to really affect things. And that gets to the point of why is there not a lot of data to help me predict my admissions for folks like me who don't have a GPA? It's because it's not a significant data set. If you take a look at schools' ABA 509 reports, like we did a couple episodes ago on the podcast, you can look up how many people they enrolled who did not have a reportable GPA. And it's usually not any more than 2, 3, 4% of the incoming class. I think this is just the reality of most people, although it was growing for a long time, a growing trend for a long time of Americans to go abroad for their undergraduate education because it was more cost effective. That trend has it hasn't kept growing exponentially. So there's not a huge population of Americans who go to schools outside the States or Canada. And then in the reverse, there's also not a significant population of foreign nationals who did their undergrad in their home country or another country and now are coming to the States for law school. This is because if you want to practice law, you not only need to have work authorization, meaning citizenship, but also you need to have a legal education in that country. So if you are a foreign national who wants to work in the States, it would benefit you to have an American JD, but then you run into the issue of citizenship. If you're an American who wants to practice law in England, it would benefit you to have an LLB from a British university, but then you're going to run into the work authorization issues in the UK. So realistically, if you're that rando Brit and you just want an American legal education because you think that it's interesting and cool, usually you then run into the practicalities of, but wait a second, I would like to not put additional hurdles between me getting my degree and me practicing. So I think I'll just get a legal education here in the UK rather than pursue a graduate degree in the States. So point being, it isn't a significant enough data set for us to build any conclusions off of. What I'd offer to you, though, is we can still approach this logically, which is most people have two numbers that can either hurt or help them for the admissions process. Their LSAT and their GPA. And we've handled a couple of those questions already. People who are GPA splitters, people who are LSAT splitters, people who have one number that's helping, one number that's hurting. In the case of people who receive their degree outside the States or Canada, you only have that one number that is helping or hurting, your LSAT. This isn't to put undue weight on the LSAT, but it is to say, like, hey, if you get an LSAT score that's above the median of the school you're targeting, guess what? Regardless of how good your undergraduate record was, you're an LSAT splitter at worst because your GPA is blank. It's a tie. It's not helping a school's GPA median, but it's not hurting it. On the other hand, the flip is also true. If you are aiming for a certain school and your LSAT falls short of their median, you now don't have the additional opportunity of your GPA potentially helping out your case. So that's really the only whammy here is if you have a blank GPA, you have more riding on the standardized test than other candidates do. And obviously, it's not to say that the standardized test will be the be-all, end-all. If you have a great resume, if you have a great, if you can clearly articulate why you want to go to law school and why this school would be a good fit for you, if you interview well, you can still be a really competitive candidate for admission. But, I just want to acknowledge, you're going to be missing that secondary stat that could also help you out in this process. Okay, and we have one last question. So from this person, I have everything ready to go for this admission cycle. My question, if, God forbid, I don't get in this cycle, what will happen to my letters of rec? Since they have dates where the professor usually signs, do I have to get new letters from my professors again, or can I use the letters later too, for example, for next cycle? This is a good question. We see a lot of folks run into this. And actually, so let's start out by saying I appreciate that you're stressed about this, but hey, actually, this is the least worrisome aspect about potentially reapplying down the road, or even if you just decide not to apply this cycle, because admissions officers understand you may have had asked this professor to write this letter of recommendation a while ago. So actually, let's go back to that earlier question about I've been working for 7 years and I don't have any academic letters of recommendation. So let me put another note in the ear of the people who are current college students, but those who may be thinking, gosh, I know I want to go to law school down the road, but I think I want to work for a couple years. I hear having a paycheck is cool. I'd like to go on a vacation or something like that, and then I'll go to law school later down the road. But what about those letters of recommendation? To throw it out there to you guys, a really great thing to do is, hey, while you and this professor are in the same place at the same time, you can have a conversation with them about your future professional plans, about how you are hoping to go to law school, and you just want to have this conversation with this professor now because you love their class, you've been doing really well, to ask them, first of all, hey, down the road, would you be willing to write a letter of recommendation for me? But then if they say yes, they'll probably want to initiate a conversation with you about like, hey, I could write that letter of rec now, and I could just send it to LSAC now if you want to. That's okay. Or heck, I'll write the letter of recommendation now, just while we're, your academic work is, fresh in my mind, and then I'll just save it for down the road. But I've seen a number of professors like to, if at all possible, send that letter to LSAC when they have it, because, and I mean this with zero, darkness or gallows humor, but like, you just don't know what the future is going to bring. Meaning faculty moving to new positions, faculty retiring, but also we do have to acknowledge the faculty may be incapacitated in some way regarding illness or even passing away. So, they recognize stuff happens, and hey, if it's all the same, I can just send a letter to LSAC, and LSAC will hold on to it for a bit of time. Now, I don't know exactly how much time, but for example, if you take an LSAT, that LSAT's valid for 5 years. I do know that letters of rec are also valid for a bit of time as well. So with that said, I'm not concerned as an admissions officer if I am reading an application in, let's say, February 2028, and I see that the letter of recommendation was dated March 2026, but I also know that this person graduated from college in 2026. I'll assume, yep, they probably just secured this letter of recommendation before they applied to law school. Now, that's all just context to them. Let's come back to the exact question. Hey, I'm looking to apply this year, and if things don't work out and I have to apply again next year, what's up with the letter of rec? Okay, it's still going to be there. And also, I would argue that if you're reapplying, the least important thing to update are your letters of rec. Sure, like, it's nice if you have some other letters of rec that you can submit, but honestly, it's more important that I see an updated resume. It's more important that you write a new personal statement or write some new optional statements. That is actually mission critical. If it's the same letters of recommendation, that's okay, because I don't think it's not worthwhile to go back to faculty to write new letters, because what they would say in a new letter is not going to be substantially different than what they wrote in an old letter. It's not like you've taken another class with them or anything like that. You know what I mean? So no, you don't have to get them to write new letters of rec. I'll offer you this tip though. So if you do end up reapplying, it's a professional courtesy that you should tell your recommenders just how this admissions process went. Even if you're admitted, you should get in touch with your recommenders to let them know how this process went. But if things don't pan out, you should tell your recommenders how things went and then what the next step is. So, I thank you so much, Professor so-and-so, for writing these letters of rec for me. I really appreciate it. Hey, just to keep you updated on things, I got a couple offers of admission, but something popped up and it brought it to light that going to law school this year just wasn't a viable option. So I'm planning on retaking the LSAT this summer and applying in the next cycle. So give them that update. And then here's what you can do. At the end, you should also thank them again for their support, and also ask them, would you mind when I reapply if I could continue to use the letter of recommendation that you provided this past year? Okay. They will almost certainly say yes. Totally okay. But it's also not uncommon for them to add, and by the way, just let me know if there's anything else I can do for you. And there you go. So if they make the offer, hey, if there's anything else I can do for you, you can ask them, hey, if you don't mind, just so that this letter of rec appears to be newer, could you resubmit that letter just with a new date? And hey, I'd be happy to get back in touch with you in August or September about this to remind you. see what they say, because it's not a heavy lift on their part to redate and submit a letter of rec, but also it's not so beneficial that I'd go out of my way to ask folks. That's why I frame it only as like, hey, if they make the offer, if there's anything else I can do for you, let me know. Take them up on that offer and say, sure thing. If you wouldn't mind doing this one little thing, that'd be really, I'd really appreciate it. Okay, so hey, everyone, on that note, that's probably a good place to wrap up things for today's episode with our mailbag episode. A huge thank you to the folks who asked those questions into our discussion forum. And for our audience, we hope that you were able to connect with some of these questions and see yourself in the shoes of some of these folks. We appreciate you listening and also watching for our YouTube audience. Make sure to like and subscribe. And until next time, we wish you all the best on your law school applications.